What if the country the West calls a terrorist state was actually the one being hunted? What if every sanction, every threat, every airstrike aimed at Iran was not about safety, but about control? And what if the real aggressor in the Middle East has been hiding in plain sight, dressed in the language of democracy and self-defense? Today, we go deeper. Today, Hidden Mind exposes the psychology, the history, and the hidden agenda that the mainstream news will never show you. Stay with me. Let's start with a fact most people don't know. Iran is one of the oldest civilizations on Earth. Over 3,000 years of continuous culture, science, and governance. The Persian Empire gave the world the first declaration of human rights. Cyrus the Great, an Iranian king, freed enslaved people in Babylon in 539 BC. This is not a nation of savages. This is a nation of survivors. Now fast forward to 1953. Iran had a democratically elected prime minister, Mohammad Mossadegh. He made one mistake. He tried to nationalize Iran's oil. To give Iranian oil back to Iranian people. The CIA and British intelligence called it a threat. And in 1953, they overthrew him. In a coup. Funded by Washington. Planned by London. They installed a king, the Shah, who ruled through a brutal secret police called SAVAK. For 26 years, Iranians lived under surveillance, torture, and suppression. All while Western governments called it stability. Then in 1979, the people rose up. The Islamic Revolution. And the message was clear. We will never again let a foreign power decide our fate. That message is still the foundation of Iranian foreign policy today. Not terrorism. Sovereignty. Blowout fact, the United States has interfered in Iran's government, supported its enemies, and sanctioned its economy, all while claiming Iran is the aggressor. You cannot start a fire, walk away, and then call the smoke a threat. Now let's look at the players. Player 1, the United States. Since 1979, the US has treated Iran as enemy number one in the Middle East. Why? Because Iran refuses to play by American rules. It won't sell oil in dollars exclusively. It won't allow US military bases on its soil. It won't recognize Israel. That's not terrorism. That's independence. And independent nations make powerful empires very nervous. Blowout fact, the US has military bases in 15 countries surrounding Iran. Imagine if Iran had military bases in Canada, Mexico, and the Caribbean. How would America feel? That is Iran's daily reality. Player 2, Israel. Israel and Iran were actually allies before 1979. The Shah of Iran, the US-backed dictator, had full diplomatic relations with Israel. Iranian oil flowed to Israel. Israeli technology flowed to Iran. The moment Iran gained its independence from Western control, that friendship ended overnight. Since then, Israel has assassinated Iranian nuclear scientists on Iranian soil. Launched cyber attacks, including the Stuxnet virus, that destroyed Iranian nuclear centrifuges. Conducted airstrikes on Iranian-linked facilities across Syria. And lobbied the United States for decades to take military action against Tehran. Blowout fact, Israel has never allowed international inspectors to verify its nuclear weapons program. Iran has. Iran is a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Israel is not. Yet the world calls Iran the nuclear threat. Ask yourself why. Player 3, Iran's strategy, the axis of resistance. Iran's response to being surrounded was not surrender. It was architecture. Iran built a network, Hezbollah in Lebanon, allied factions in Iraq, the Houthis in Yemen, and support for Palestinian resistance in Gaza. This is what Western media calls Iranian-backed terrorism. But look at it from Iran's perspective. Every proxy is positioned near a potential attack route. Hezbollah sits on Israel's northern border. The Houthis can disrupt shipping lanes that fund Iran's enemies. Iraqi militias can push back against US bases. This isn't terrorism. This is deterrence. The same logic the US uses when it places aircraft carriers near its enemies. Just, without the aircraft carriers. Now let's enter the hidden mind. Because the real battlefield is not in the desert. It's inside your head. Tactic 1. Label and dismiss. When powerful nations want to destroy a country without public opposition, they first destroy its image. Call it an axis of evil. Call its leaders madmen. Call its people radical. Once the label sticks, the public stops asking questions. They accept sanctions that starve civilians. They accept airstrikes that kill innocents. They accept regime change that destroys stability. All because the label was applied first. This is called dehumanization through language. And it has been used against Iran for over 4 decades. Tactic 2, nuclear fear as a control weapon. Here's a psychological trick governments love. Take something the public fears, nuclear weapons, and attach that fear to the country you want to isolate. Iraq was accused of having weapons of mass destruction. They didn't. The country was destroyed anyway. Over 1 million people died. No one was held accountable. Now the same language is being used about Iran. They're close to a bomb. They're a nuclear threat. We must act before it's too late. Does this script sound familiar? Blowout fact, the U.S. intelligence community's own report, the 2007 National Intelligence Estimate, concluded that Iran halted its nuclear weapons program in 2003. But the fear machine kept running. Because fear sells wars. And wars sell weapons. And weapons make certain people very rich. Tactic 3, sanctions as invisible war. Bombs make headlines. Sanctions don't. But sanctions can be just as deadly. US and European sanctions on Iran have blocked medicine imports during the COVID pandemic, collapsed Iran's currency, wiping out the savings of ordinary families, cut off Iranian students from international education, prevented humanitarian aid from reaching civilians. This is not pressure on a government. This is collective punishment of an entire population. And it is hidden behind the clean, bloodless word, sanctions. Current situation analysis. Now, where do things stand today? After October 7, 2023, the Hamas attack on Israel, the Middle East changed overnight. Israel launched a devastating military campaign in Gaza. And Iran found itself at a crossroads. Support its allies openly, and risk all-out war. Or stay back, and lose credibility as the leader of the axis of resistance. In April 2024, for the first time in history, Iran launched a direct missile and drone strike on Israeli territory. Over 300 missiles and drones were fired. The world held its breath. But here's what the media didn't explain. Iran gave advance notice to multiple countries before the strike. The attack was designed to demonstrate capability, not cause mass casualties. It was a message, not a massacre. A sophisticated piece of strategic communication. The response of a nation that wants the world to know it can strike. But is choosing not to go further. Blowout fact. Despite 300-plus projectiles launched, the Iranian strike caused minimal casualties, suggesting it was deliberately calibrated. Compare that to the tens of thousands of civilian deaths in Gaza. And ask yourself, who is really indiscriminate? Now. The nuclear question. Iran currently enriches uranium to 60% purity. Weapons grade requires 90%. Iran has not crossed that line. But here is the uncomfortable truth. The more Iran is threatened, the more rational it becomes to have a deterrent. North Korea was threatened. North Korea got nuclear weapons. Now no one invades North Korea. Iran is watching that lesson carefully. Let's zoom out. Because this is not just about Iran and Israel. This is about the architecture of the New World Order. The Greater Israel concept, a vision of Israeli territory stretching across much of the Levant, is not official Israeli government policy. But the facts on the ground tell a different story. Israeli settlements in the West Bank have grown every single year, through both right-wing and left-wing Israeli governments. Gaza is being systematically depopulated. Lebanon has been struck repeatedly, degrading Hezbollah's military capacity. Syria has been bombed hundreds of times by Israeli aircraft. And now Iran remains, the last major resistance to this regional reshaping. Blowout fact. Since 2010, Israel has conducted over 400 airstrikes inside Syrian territory, with virtually no international condemnation. Imagine any other country doing this. The UN Security Council would convene within hours. But for Israel, silence. Why? Because the US holds veto power at the UN. And the US and Israel are not just allies. They are strategically inseparable. 3 possible futures. Scenario 1, negotiated de-escalation. Iran and the West reach a new nuclear deal. Sanctions are lifted. Iran moderates. Possible. But requires political will that currently does not exist. Scenario 2, military escalation. Israel strikes Iran's nuclear facilities. Iran retaliates directly. The US is pulled in. Russia and China back Iran economically. The world fractures into two blocks. This is the nightmare scenario. And it is closer than most people realize. Scenario 3, Iran goes nuclear. Quietly. Without announcement. Like Israel did. And suddenly, the balance of power in the Middle East shifts permanently. This may already be in motion. Here is what Hidden Mind wants you to walk away with today. Iran is not the cartoon villain the West has sold you. It is a nation with a traumatic history of foreign interference. That decided, one day, to stop being a victim. Is Iran perfect? No. Its government has committed serious human rights violations against its own people. That is real. That is documented. That matters. But imperfect does not mean evil. And standing up to American and Israeli military pressure does not make you a terrorist. It makes you inconvenient. The real hidden agenda in the Middle East is not Iran's nuclear program. It is the redrawing of maps. The concentration of power. And the use of your fear, your media consumption, and your silence. As weapons. The world is being reshaped right now. The question is whether you understand the forces doing the reshaping. Or whether you simply watch the explosions and believe what the caption tells you. Think deeper. Question the frame. And never let anyone else do your thinking for you. Call to action. If this video made you see the Middle East differently, watch our next video on how governments manufacture public consent for wars that were planned years in advance. Subscribe to Hidden Mind, because the truth doesn't trend. But it matters.